If you are using Expo Router in your React Native app, chances are high you encountered some problem or got frustrated along the way. In this video, I will improve the quality of your life and get you unstuck by sharing 10 things that are important or come in handy when using Expo Router with React Native. And I'm pretty sure you haven't seen all of them because some of them are barely documented and super fresh with the latest version of Expo Router. So let's dive into that. I am inside a pretty standard React Native application with Expo Router. I just added one folder. We do have a pretty basic stack layout at the root, and we do have an index file. And the first tip is about using stacked modals, or actually a stack within a modal. So you might know that you can, of course, define a page as a modal by simply setting the options. If I go to my layout and I define for the modal page, or more precisely the modal index page, because we don't have a layout file here. If I define a presentation of modal, it will open up as a card modal on iOS. However, if I want to go into like a second page, the usual behavior is that it will probably open as another card, but sometimes you want to have a new stack within. The solution to this is simple. What you can do is you can place another layout file in your modal. Within that, you're gonna define another stack. So I now have my modal group, I have a new layout, I have an index file, which then links to a second file. This also gives me an error because some routes might not exist, so I can now remove the index part here and just define it for the whole group. As a result, I can open up my modal once I do a little reload, because that usually messes up my code. I see I now have the usual stack header, and if I open the second modal, I navigate simply within my modal. The second tip is for using a tab bar. So a tab bar is pretty simple to implement. I have my inside folder and I do have another tabs folder here, a group, which defines my little tab bar layout. From my index, I simply link to the inside area, and if I click open tabs, I will be inside my tab bar. No big problem. But in many cases, you now want to show like a details page. I call this standalone page. And in many cases, you don't want to show the tab bar down here. There are many solutions out there which tell you to use segments in the layout file of the tabs and then set the style of the tab bar to display none, and all of these are really awkward to work with. To be honest, I tried them, they work to some degree, but they don't feel good at all. The solution is simple. You need to rethink how you structure your application. In many cases, you would actually have like the tabs up here. So I intentionally put the tabs in its own folder. So in my inside area, which you can usually have like after a login, I have another layout file. And this layout file simply defines another stack navigation. You just need to manage your headers, and I also did this on the outside. So many cases you have like duplicate headers. If I now put a new file in here, which I call standalone.tsx, and do a React Native functional export component, and then from my tab index, I link to index inside/standalone. Let's see what happens. Open tabs, open standalone. And because the standalone page is now above the actual tab bar layout, we don't see a tab bar. And this is the right way to structure your application if you want to have a page within a tab bar layout, but without the actual tab bar at the bottom. Tip number 3 is a pretty easy one, but it is essential for your application. So if you have more than just a text within your link component, let's say you do have a touchable opacity in here, or a pressable, or whatever you might have, touchable opacity from React Native, then you need to use a specific prop here to make this work. So my open modal is now wrapped in a touchable opacity, and oh, it's not working anymore. Why is it not working anymore? So Link usually puts the child element in a text element. But if you have something like a pressable included, you need to forward these actions, and you do this by setting asChild here. Once you do this, the styling will work, the click events will work, everything will be forwarded from link to the child component, which in our case is a touchable opacity. Additionally to this, there are some options that you can use. So if I open my tab bar right now, the default behavior is to push that page on my stack, which also means I can do this. I can go swipe to go back, which is pretty cool if you have like the back button and you get this out of the box. But think about especially a login. You usually don't want your users to swipe back your whole inside area and go back to the login. I've seen this in many applications. The solution to this is to replace your view. And you can just do this by setting replace here on the link component. If I now go to my tabs, there's no more going back. There's no back arrow, and we fix this. So I don't have a way to go back, so I need to reload. And just like this, you can also specify push or navigate. Actually not navigate, you can just push or replace here. But that should help you to structure your views and the transitions in a better way. And with asChild, you can also have any kind of element included in the link. Tip number 4 is a small one, but it is unbelievable important, and I've used this so many times, and now I finally got the solution. So imagine you have a details page just like we do have with our standalone page. I now changed this page slightly a bit to just display a map of colors, and you can click on them and then some color will be selected. How can I pass that value back to the previous page? That is a common scenario. You go somewhere, you go back, you want that page to do something or have some sort of information. Well, it's actually easier than you might think. So on our standalone page, we can use the use router hook from Expo Router to get access to the router. More on that in the next tip. And then we can call router set params and set the color. Let's set this as the background color right here. That won't change really a whole lot, so I can go there and I can still go back. It won't change a lot. Now in my index page, I'm already setting the background color of this view with a state, so I do use the default color from React Navigation. By the way, this could be a tip on its own. You can import the default theme and use this. If you now also want to get access to the value from that standalone page, all you got to do is access the params. So we can do it like this, background. And now be careful, in most examples you're going to find use local search params. However, in many cases here with this approach, you need to use the global search params because we updated the global search params. You can also make TypeScript happy if you want to, so include something like this. If you're using query param, you should usually make them optional, and then we can close our function. Cool. Now we then got our background. Why did I put ID in here? This should be background. And we can put in a nice little use effect block here, which changes or is executed whenever our background changes. So let's save this, go to the standalone page, I select the color, and my background changes. And again, it changes. So I made a selection on this detail page, this standalone page. I come back, and because we're using the global search params and have it as a dependency for use effect, we set our selected background color to that new value. Tip number 5 is using the hooks of Expo Router. You've seen it before. You can access the router by using use router in any kind of view within your layout. Now you can use this if you have like a touch event somewhere. So let's put in a touchable opacity here and call something like on open tabs. And within that, we can just directly call the router function to push my inside area. So let's do a refresh. And if I now press imperative tabs, the same thing just like before happens. This comes in handy if you have any kind of click event, you want to do something else before that, or in general, you need imperative routing within your application. Use router is not the only hook you can import. There are quite a few. You can also especially use navigation. So if you use navigation equals use navigation, you get access to pretty much the same object you're used to from React Navigation if you use that before. And there are some other things like the segments, which can come in really handy if you call use segments from Expo Router. So with the segments, you can access information in the URL. So you see I'm right now, I have the first path of my segments here. There's also a path name. So check out all the hooks. Use global search params, use local search params, and use all the available options you get to manage your application with hooks from Expo Router. Tip 6 is to define screen options and properties on that page. So usually we go into our layout where we define like a stack layout, and then we have our options, header shown, presentation, and that is cool. But sometimes you have buttons in your header components, left, right, that should trigger certain actions on a specific page, or you might have a search bar. What you can do actually is you can define this right on the component on that page. So all you need to do is say stack and make sure you import this from Expo Router.screen, and then you can do the same options like you would do anywhere else. So in this case, I'm setting my title here to home. I should really have a button to go back, and then we do have home up here. Or we could call this outside login, and we change right here. And just like this, it comes in really handy once you start doing stuff like a search bar. So here we would have a state, which is search, and then this state on my page would be connected to my search bar. Where am I actually? I'm actually on the outside area. So on the outside area, I do have my bar up here. I can now do something, and once I'm done, this will log to the console. So many of you asked about this before from a previous clone, how the search bar could be connected to a state, and the solution is define your screen options on the page. Tip number 7 is about doing something when you reload a page. Let's say every time I enter tab 2, I want to reload data or I want to execute something. I've had this problem many times, and the solution is to use a hook called use focus effect. You need to be a bit careful because inside use focus effect, what you want to do is you want to have a use callback block, which is memoized. This is still required currently, maybe not in the future. I don't know what's coming to React next, but let's say we do it like this. Then I put in tab 2 is focused, and let's check out the logs. So I go tab 1 and tab 2 focused, and whenever I enter the tab, it is executed. So this could be your entry point to do some sort of operation that should always be executed when a certain screen is focused. Tip number 8 is about the tab bar. Once again, sometimes you want to have an additional page. Let's say I do have a secret page in here. Okay, React Native functional export, and see what happens. Automatically, if I go to my tabs, this will be included in the tab bar, and that is simply because we have our layout here for the tab bar, and it will just pick up by default all the files in that folder and render them as tabs in our bar. If you want to prevent that, nothing easier than that. Just go to the layout file where we currently have like the default tabs. We extend this to actually have something included, and we define an entry for the screen that we just did. So tabs.screen name equals secret options. And what we want to set is the href to null. If we set the href of a page to null, see what happens. They are not rendered inside your layout anymore, and you can use this behavior in anything for the tabs and also for the draw component if there is a certain screen that shouldn't be rendered in the default layout. Tip number 9 is that by now you can have platform-specific layout files. You can not only have platform-specific components, you can also have platform-specific layout files. This could look like this. So we do have our layout at the root level, and I will just bring in a layout android.tsx. As a result, let's do a little reload and let's open up my file here. So right now it looks pretty similar, I think, because on our page we're still setting the stack screen options. So this probably overrides our behavior. Let's do a little refresh here. And as a result, this page is now called index again. And my Android file, oh, you're totally messing up the tension here, Android simulation. And as a result, we do have our custom title up here. So again, here we set it in our custom layout.android.tsx. It is always recommended to have one default layout.tsx and not just have a layout Android and iOS. That could cause some problems, so keep that in mind. And especially you can also have a layout.web.tsx, which comes in really handy because then you can have a specific layout on the web, which doesn't really look good with a tab bar. So you can have something completely different on the web and then use tabs or a drawer for the native iOS and Android layouts. The last tip, and something you probably haven't seen before, is about deep links. So with Expo Router, you get easy deep links into your application because everything is basically a URL. However, sometimes you need to want to handle these links in a different way. Okay, so in my case, I updated the scheme in my app.json and I made an Expo pre-build to use my own scheme and not the Expo scheme. Now, what I did is I added a plus native intent.tsx at the root of my project. Actually, not tsx, just ts. And in here we have a function. We have a function redirect system path, in which we get the path and an initial boolean. This initial boolean tells us if the app was just open like the first time or not, and the path is the path to our application. In my case, I simply added an alert. If this is not the initial opening, I will put out an alert. So let's see how this works. We can actually test deep links with this simple command. For Android, you can actually also use something. You can also check out the course on Galaxies about deep links, where I share more of these. So in my case, I use the URI scheme open, I use my app scheme Simon Router, and I use inside/tabs, which should open my tab bar area. On top of that, we should probably see a little logs. So let's press enter, and we see, oh, you finally come back. This alert was triggered from the native intent, and we also see down here the path. So this is my system path, and that means you could do a whole lot of things with this. If you just want to deep link into your app, this is probably not interesting for you. However, Evan Bacon put together a cool example, Expo Router native intent demo, where he was using an extension. He was using with image import. So basically what he wants to do is allow people to press the share button on other applications and then open our Expo application. Once you do this, the app is open with something like file and path to image. And then he did put up that native intent file right here, which checks if the path starts with file -- something, and then he returns a kind of slightly different route with a modal and the file. So he could basically automatically show a modal over the page if our page was called from that share sheet. So if you're interested in more granular control over the deep links or the universal links into your application, put out a native intent file and use the redirect system path to handle the incoming path. Alright, that's everything for today. I really hope you enjoyed these 10 tips. If you did so, smash the subscribe button and the like button below this video for new React Native videos coming every week. My recommendation is definitely to use Expo Router. It is still probably early days and we might see some changes, but it has come to a very stable version, and in my opinion, Expo Router is the future. Why do so many people struggle with it? Maybe we need more education and more documentation around this. So this video is my attempt to help you with these little things that give you the impression that Expo Router is not ready or hard to use. I really hope you can now build better applications, better navigation in your React Native application with these tips. If you enjoyed this video, also check out galaxies.dev, which is my way to help you with everything React Native through export courses and give you the shortcuts and the support you need to build epic React Native apps. And speaking of building apps, check out this video I did about all the different ways you can build your Expo application. It's not just EAS and cloud, you can do most of the stuff locally. So check it out and I will catch you in the next one. And until then, happy coding, Simon.